because Google Hangouts actually made it easy to have video chats and phone calls. They would completely disrupt all communications. And welcome to Hacking Business Technology. I am Matt Hooper.
Hello.
Mark Kawasaki. Hey, Mark.
How you doing?
I'm doing good. Recovering from my appendicitis.
Yes. Oh, you poor thing.
Yeah, I missed you guys last week, but I was watching.
Yeah.
And, I actually like the show so much better when I'm not on it. Maybe
that's how I feel. Well, you shouldn't have to get your appendix out to watch it, but
yeah, I wasn't able to make the Gartner Symposium show either last week, and all of my workmates at Landesk were saying, "Boy, that's quite the excuse to get out of going to the Gartner show."
Yeah, wow. Where was that at?
That was held in Orlando. I think it's been in Orlando the last 4 or 5 years, or maybe ever.
Yeah, right.
I've always wanted to go. I've never had the opportunity to go though, either because when I could have went, schedule conflicts were there, or the companies I worked for when I could have the time didn't have the money.
Yeah.
So it's always something. It's expensive. It's expensive to host. It's expensive to go. But they get a lot of people.
Yeah, it's probably a good one. I've never been there either.
Yeah, I think it's somewhere between 8,000 and 12,000 people.
Wow. Does Forrester have anything comparative?
Yeah, Forrester does. I don't know much about it. I should probably beef up on that a little bit. Forrester's been quiet lately, though.
You think so?
I mean, yeah, I don't know. I think they've been a little quiet. At least in the ITSM space, they've been quiet.
Yeah. Well, they have Robert Stroud now, right?
They do have Robert Stroud now.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's
so that was
good.
some news. He's come over as an analyst.
Yeah.
Unlike David Cannon, who joined Forrester, but David's a consultant. David
Right.
Meets with customers and helps them think about their strategy. Whereas I'm assuming that Robert's going to play a role maybe in Evelyn Yerlich's team, maybe, or I don't know. We'll have to see how that pans out. We should invite him on.
We should.
Yeah,
That's a good
we'll
idea.
do that. I've been a guest on for a while.
Yep. So the big news this week was Dell buying EMC.
Yes, and VMware.
Well, I guess
Right?
that kind of comes with it. I don't know how that works.
Yeah, see, I don't know either. I read into it a
EMC
little
owns
bit.
81% of VMware.
Was that what they owned?
Yeah.
I know they didn't own 100%, but they bought out the outstanding shares of it.
And from what I saw, VMware kind of tanked after the announcement.
You sound surprised by that.
No, I don't know. So I mean, it's been interesting to watch the media. I mean, for once, the media kind of, at least the technical media, echoed what I was feeling, and that's that it's they're still in a losing space. It's on-premise. It's private cloud. It seems weird that Dell, who's already dying, would be buying a company that is kind of in the next generation of companies that will be dying. That's kind of how I see it. I mean, because you still can't compete with the cloud space, with Amazon and IBM and Microsoft and those players. So, I mean, yes, it makes them a player in the private space, but going forward, it's all about the cloud. So it's an interesting. I would have, if I was Dell, I would have instead bought up, at least whatever I could afford in the cloud space.
Rackspace.
Yeah, sure.
So I have a little bit of a different view. I'm not surprised that VMware dipped in its stock price. That makes sense to me. I see that, a company like VMware had a market opportunity, capitalized on it while it could, and the threat of AWS virtualization, but even more so, Docker, I think, has been a bigger hit to VMware, and just in the growing landscape of open source is something that I think is the bigger opportunity. But the risk is still there. A lot of organizations. So I do think it's a good strategy. I wouldn't be surprised if Dell came up with a true hybrid model where they started co-locating, Dell servers with EMC storage on high-end VMware private cloud platforms. Now, if they went that strategy and offered some kind of, container in a box type data center solution where you can plug and play Lego type in your data center, or plug it into your colo, or plug it into their, hybrid cloud offering, I could see that they could start to dominate that space. They would have the channels, the partners, the reach to execute on that, which Amazon does not. Amazon doesn't have any partners. Amazon is all about self-service, and Amazon's on the presumption that development teams can do this programmatically and do it themselves.
Yeah.
But the sprawl has been an issue, and at some point when AWS and Amazon hits its financial curve, and starts to have to actually audit companies and put a little bit more emphasis around who's running what in their environment, they're going to take a hit for that. Now, we haven't hit that level of maturity yet.
Right.
There's a plethora of viruses and malware and unscrupulous systems running on Amazon. Now, we know it, the governments know it, everybody knows it, but everybody's kind of turning a blind eye to it right now because they don't know what to do about it. But at some point, they're going to have to put some pressure on that. And I think that's going to start to change the model of how things are governed and how open things are. That's how I see it.
It's interesting. I mean, so you're talking about, what EMC and VMware could do is kind of allow the ability to port your virtual machines to the cloud, move them between kind of a private hosted internally to a private hosted externally kind of solution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's a hybrid, right? It's the internal external model. And that's the thing, right? Is if you look at where your risks are, the cloud offers some risks that on-premise doesn't. But then on-premise, you have to mitigate your own risks with the physical outage or the physical ramifications.
Not just that, but security. I still believe that Amazon's better at security than most companies can be themselves. But I don't know.
Yeah, see, I don't know. They could be. They could be. I think Amazon does a great job in securing customers from impacting each other. But I don't know that they necessarily do any kind of good job in helping people impact them from themselves.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
I mean, because if I went up there and I put up an AWS image and I opened up, a unsecure SSH connection to it and to remotely control it, and I didn't lock down IP addresses and subnets that could gain access to that, anybody could gain access to that, and it's happened.
Yeah. See, I don't know how much work they do to provide guidance on those types of things. That'd be interesting.
It's gotten better, but when I started using AWS, 7 or 8 years ago, it was not good at all.
Yeah.
It was fend for yourself for the most part. But I also at that time I was at Inforonics and we were an MSP, so I had staff who were phenomenal and knew that. Now, if I was a startup, I'd use Amazon to start writing my stuff. I'd use GitHub and I'd use as much open source platform as possible, but I'd still have some inherent risks I wouldn't really think about.
Yeah.
And what's the concern too with Docker is Docker makes it so easy to grab these containers and have everything already kind of built out with your microservices. So I can grab a LAMP stack. I can have a Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP, just bam, right?
Yep. Yeah.
But who's validated that? What's kind of hidden behind there? I mean, Trojan horses have that name for a reason. They're not detectable. You don't really see them. It's the gift.
That's interesting. I mean, I wonder how many CIOs, if you ask them today if they trust a LAMP stack from a reputable cloud provider versus their own internal, which one they would trust more. I don't know. It's a good question.
Yeah, I don't know either. It comes down to applications themselves too. It was interesting. I got a demo this morning of a product called NextThink. It's one of our partners, it's this really cool technology. It sits on your device and it watches everything that's going on, CPU and applications and stuff like that. And they showed me this compliance dashboard, and they're saying, oh, look, and we can even show you what devices are out of compliance. And I said, well, what does that even mean? You know, they're like, well, these applications were running and maybe they weren't supposed to. But I said to myself, A, how do you know that? And B, who sets up all those rules? Because that's, you know, I got a buddy of mine, a former business partner, who works for Bit9, and that's kind of their bag, right? They do whitelisting, and so they say, here's like all the applications that could run, but anything that is not in this whitelisted space gets shut down. So Bit9's claim to fame was in the healthcare space and other devices where they didn't want, you know, and get us wallpaper or any other kind of freedom of expression to happen on a PC or a device. So it was just, this is what can run and this is what can't. And, you know, I had made that recommendation to a healthcare company in Maine 5 or 6 years ago. And it worked very successfully for them because they were getting hit by viruses, and not even so much viruses, but just software bloatware, people installing things that didn't need to, that would impact like their electronic medical record systems. So the whitelisting is a good idea. But like, where's that universal verification body of knowledge? Like, where's VeriSign? Like, whatever happened to those guys who could do some software validation and certification? Or maybe is that just too much of a risk?
No, I mean, that exists. I think there's plenty of security products that scan your network and determine, you know, if things are configured correctly. But that's more at a patch and vulnerability level. I don't know that it goes beyond that to platforms and applications.
Yeah, like, you know, if I have an executable on my laptop, I would love to know that, like, there should be some kind of bit hash encryption identifier that it's validated and said, yes, you are the right executable. Just, you know, the name of it, iTunes.exe or DMG, whatever it would be called, doesn't necessarily mean that's the right one.
Yeah, I've seen products like that too, where even if you rename an executable to something else, it can dig in and see what it is and that sort of thing. But how trustworthy they are, I don't know.
Yeah, and how real time is it? And is it too late?
It's a moving target all the time, obviously, right? As soon as a new vulnerability is discovered, it's got all those algorithms or whatever they are, your threshold there has to be updated. I have to imagine that the cloud providers are in that business. I mean, when you get a server from Amazon, you should be able to trust that it's patched at the most standard level that people would agree on in the security space, right? Right.
And I guess it's the risk tolerance. That's all that it comes down to. In last week's episode, when you guys were talking about applications and vendors who were providing security, you know, I came back, I tweeted, I said that you can have a vendor tell you they're committed to security and that they're secure and that you trust them, but all of that's really irrelevant. What are their series of activities that they're doing to ensure their security, and what's their breadth, depth, and financial ability to execute on their commitment? You know, it's Slack could tell me all day long that they're secure and that security is really, really important in their world, and I might trust them. But out of the whatever they just took, $350 million, which blows my mind that they took that much money for a fairly slick collaborative tool. Because they could have turned the revenue model on. That's why it's not that they couldn't use the money. It's just they could have turned the revenue model on. They probably would have made that pretty quickly. They have over 1 million users, right? That's $3.50 a month. That's $350 million a month. Why take money from investors? Yeah.
That's interesting.
But I digress. But how much of that cash is going to go towards their resilience strategy? How much of their staff are they hiring to be focused on security and, you know, pen testing and validation and regression analysis and all this kind of stuff? How much? Where's their new chief resilience officer that now exists in some of these organizations from a business risk standpoint?
Yeah. Yep. Right. And I mean, it's always a struggle to balance between spending money on security versus spending money on innovation, of course.
Yeah.
They don't go hand in hand very easily.
And so you have to wonder, maybe this is something we should ask Robert Stroud out. He's Mr. Governance.
Yeah.
Has spoken to hundreds of organizations around the world on this. But this new role. Have you seen this new role of Chief Resilience Officer? I'll put the link in the show notes here. I never heard this before. I just heard it this week when I saw it from the founder of the Resilience Institute, which is no surprise. He wrote the blog. A gentleman named Sven Hansen here. But what it's saying is that this new role is because digitization and resilience is not just about malicious hacks. Digitization also has other inherent risks, and our level of acceptance of risk, as of late, has actually increased. We have accepted greater risk, and I think that's a personal thing too. In some ways, my personal information, I have accepted greater risk. My digital photos, I used to be so diligent about backing up on hard drives, and now I just back it up to Google Cloud and think, Google's not going away, So this new Chief Resilience Officer is focused on a couple things. It laid out six particular things, and I'll read them off that the Chief Resilient Officer must do. It says, understand how resilience works in the complex system of organizational life, which I thought was very interesting because it's already expressing, because cultures have changed.
Yeah.
The way the workforce has changed, there's inherent risk there, and it's added complexity, right? Seek out and define the strategic scenarios of risk and opportunity, which in ITSM, that is something that we're supposed to do for business service continuity. It's something we're supposed to do for declaration of major incidents. Document and prepare for the likely disruption and transformations required. Design and coach organizational functions to be ready and resilient. Relentlessly support and coach resilience building behaviors. And then lastly, guide the board and coach the CEO to ensure resilience is a priority.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
But I mean, at the same time, it's just another area that a chief security officer should be focusing on. I mean, it's interesting to call it out as a separate thing because it shows how much focus we really need on these different aspects. But yeah, I mean, I've seen our own security organization here kind of as it's been built up. Now we have a resilience team within the security department. I mean, I've seen the same thing there.
Yeah, to me, this role is kind of working a bit upstream though, which I like. The security officer is a little bit like the governor, the chief of police, or the one who's overseeing how we do enforcement. And of course, there's outreach programs from the police to try to build community awareness and things like that, which is all good. But this is almost going a step higher and saying, okay, well, wait a second. We have more crime when the economy drops. So what are we doing to keep sustainable business and making sure that economy generation is built around arts and science in sustainable economy rather than drug trafficking and prostitution and all these other things, which will degrade. So it's the resilience officer almost functions more at the occupational therapist level than the security level, which from a digital transformation standpoint, I think that's pretty important from us in ITSM. We focus so much on command and control. The chief resilience officers never going to be successful with command and control. It's basically affecting, influencing culture and behavior. Right? Yeah. So I see that percolating into our world in a very interesting way.
Yeah. I think it's also interesting to look at how companies are dealing with breaches as well, and how the public is dealing with breaches. There's also more acceptance of breaches, I think. And that's been interesting to see, almost like it's just part of life now. I mean, I don't think Target's taken a hit very much from their massive breach, and that was serious business.
Yeah.
It
Have you
may be
stopped shopping
different,
at Target? When's the last time you shopped at Target?
like yesterday.
Yeah. Last week for me.
So, I mean, they were able to sustain that, and I wonder how much these types of resilience or other groups can help an organization recover and move forward. I mean, it may be a different story for Ashley Madison, or, you know, what I've been thinking about this week is Volkswagen. I mean, what they did and what they were discovered to have done was one of the biggest security breaches ever brought forth from within the highest levels of a company. I mean, I wonder how much its security team was involved in those types of decisions.
Are you talking about the computation around the pollutants that the cars are putting into the?
Yes, I mean the deliberate kind of formulaic and programmatic covering up of things, you know, I mean, should have been seen as a massive security risk because it makes the company vulnerable to massive reputational disaster.
That's an interesting point. You know, I never put those two things together, that Volkswagen would be a security breach. But what you're saying, if I hear you correctly, is that they don't have the validation ability, that they don't have the checks and balances enough where they have corporate compliance. How in the world could they keep anything else compliance? How in the world could we trust them that someone actually validated that their remoteless keyless entry, or the one that starts up their car on their mobile app, is actually going to be anywhere whatsoever secure?
Right. Yes. Yeah. Well, and not just that, but a security organization is responsible for securing all aspects of the company, not just data, but also reputation and you know, its ability to make money.
That's a really good point. That went back to my point earlier. I don't care what a company says about their level of commitment to security. What is their demonstrable ability to execute to their commitment?
Yeah. It's interesting because though I did shop at Target yesterday, I seriously would not buy a Volkswagen today. And I might have if that hadn't have happened.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm responding so strongly to it, but I am. I mean, I don't like shadiness.
because unethical behavior, if it's cultural, then it's only gonna say that it's just okay to turn a blind eye. It's just okay to let things that are high risk flow through.
Right, and it's one thing, emissions, you know, so what, maybe, right? But I mean,
safety. It was greed. It was a phenomenal amount of greed, and they did it to just save money and make.
Right. And what if they're cutting corners on safety? You know.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it's an excellent point. You know, too. It's funny. I look at the response that Target had to that situation. They held people accountable. Ultimately, became transparent about it. They did the due diligence they needed to do to try to vet things. And so, since I will continue to buy things online from Joey's electronics store and give them my credit card, I'm going to give Target my credit card because I just assume that by now, with the money that they have and the resources and their demonstrated ability to execute to their security promise, they'll be even more secure than Joey down the street.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I would hate to think how small companies are dealing with credit card information in the digital world today. I mean, I actually saw a small company vendor using like a personal like a LastPass kind of situation where you can have your credit card information stored for easy use with all their customers' credit cards.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's not that uncommon.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the thing we're waiting for, I think, in the security space, especially when it comes to PII, personally identifiable information, is, when we have the tokenization of our transaction. So you don't need all my data. You need a tokenized, retirable set of information for the time being. This is how you get my cash. This is how you get my address. This is how you get my email address to contact me with my status update. Upon goods received, I want to terminate my relationship with you and thus the information that you have about me until I further need you. And that's what I want.
Yeah. but that's hard to guarantee these days.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, interesting. Any other news, Mark, before we wrap up for this week?
I don't have anything else, but I'm looking forward to another week.
Yeah, just real quickly, we got a couple conferences coming up. We've got the Enterprise DevOps Conference, which is pretty exciting. Again, another year where it's smack on having a Fusion as a competitor, and Symposium from Society for Information Management also happening the first week of November. So, three major senior IT. Well, I don't know if Fusion's all that senior IT anymore. I guess it's gone down a little bit of a level, more to the practitioner and to the analyst level. But three big events all around the same week.
Really
I wonder if that's intentional.
I think so. I'm curious to see how the DevOps section of Fusion goes, though. I mean, that's new, and not sure if they know what they're doing, but it'll be interesting to hear some feedback.
Yeah, well, I'll certainly look forward to giving some feedback. I'm one of the speakers on that Sunday afternoon.
Cool.
And also, too, I'll be speaking on the Tuesday at Fusion. I'm excited about this presentation. There is almost zero text in my whole prezo.
Good.
So all pictures, and it's
can
all fun
just-
stuff. So
TEDx it. That's good.
there you go.
All
That's
right, man.
been a great show. That's how you hack business technology. Thanks, Mark, for joining us. We'll
you.
look forward next week. Hopefully, we'll have Mr. Barron back from his vacation.
All right. Bye,
Great.
everybody.
Have a good week.